would that be okay if we take a few minutes as a group, all of those listening, to just take a few moments now where we can practice tuning into this moment? And while we do that, it's really inviting certain qualities of kindness, of patience with ourselves, of treating this moment as if it's never actually happened before. And this collection of people, both that we can see and those that are listening, have never assembled before. So this is an entirely fresh moment. And none of us know exactly what's going to happen next. And so these are some moments where we can actually cultivate our ability to be with the unknown and really carve a new relationship with life, really, as it's unfolding. So there are I'd say there's two gifts that are present all the time that all of us can connect to. And one of them is the force of gravity. So I'm going to invite you just to take a moment and let yourself feel the places where you can make a connection with the ground, with your chair, if you're lying down with your bed or couch, and actually just notice the way that the earth right now is holding us. And feel that sense of being held. And that how it actually always is a support that's with us. And so as you do that, you might even notice that you could relax a little bit into that hold. So just kind of letting ourselves maybe take some of the armor off that we might be wearing as we kind of keep ourselves braced for what might happen next. And notice, wow, in this moment, there's actually nothing for us to do, but simply an opportunity to be with things as they are. And then the other gift is our breath. Each of us have a breath that's been with us from day one. So it's a reliable friend, actually, that knows how to breathe our bodies. And as we tune in, we probably can easily notice that one thing we're all doing is holding our breath collectively. So we could actually take some time now to choose a different kind of breath. And so I'm going to invite you to maybe just let yourself breathe a little bit more deeply into maybe your belly. And just letting yourself have your exhalation be a little bit slower, a little bit deeper. And you can do this with your eyes open or your eyes closed, depending on what supports you in tuning in. And as you do this, you might even notice if there's a part of your body that wants to relax. So maybe it's like letting your shoulders roll back or letting your jaw unclench. For me, it's kind of letting my hands open rather than being in kind of little fists. So however you might notice there's a place in your body where you could notice there's no need to fight or flee anything right now. Just a chance to take in how you are and see if you can make space for whatever you find without needing to judge it or have it be separate from the moment. So just a few deeper breaths, feeling the ground, and then if you want, with your eyes open, maybe just making sure you can notice where you are. So see if you could even name for yourself 2 or 3 things that are in your visual field, whether it's, for me right now, I'm looking out a window, I can see Mount Elphinstone and see the snow that's still on it. I can see a bit of wind that's in one of the trees outside my window. I notice this glass of water that's calling my name. Maybe you have a pet that's in your vicinity that's wanting a little bit of a tactile connection right now. So just anything that's for you, around you, and possibly even supports you in a willingness to be here. Supports you in feeling connected to yourself, to each other. And maybe just 1 or 2 final breaths where we can appreciate this breath that connects us. Connects us to each other and connects us to the world around us.
That was lovely.
Absolutely. Rahul, can we do this 3 times a day? Will you live stream on Facebook?
I was going to say on WhatsApp, no problem.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's excellent.
So I thought I might introduce a very simple mindfulness practice that can help us integrate what Marius and Lisa have been talking about, is this integration of what are we feeling, how is it showing up in our behaviors, how is it showing up in our thoughts, so that we have a way to take that courageous step to notice what's going on for us. And just like we've been discussing, that's going to give us hopefully a little bit more information, a little bit more resolve to know what we need next, what we might need to honor in order to serve ourselves and therefore serve others. So this is called the STOP technique, and I'll just walk us through the definition and then a very short practice so we have a chance to taste it. So STOP, S stands for stop, and that's really an invitation to take a pause from our usual conditioned habits of thought, patterns of thinking, our time travel, where we are visiting the future or going in the past, and actually a pause to see if we might enter in the moment. And then the T, much like we did last week, is an invitation to take a breath. And on a larger level, it's an invitation to relax, to let our shoulders relax, maybe let our jaw relax, any areas that we're holding some tension. It's really to remind ourselves right now that there's nothing actually to fight or flee or even to freeze from. That right now, actually, it's an opportunity simply to focus on being and be curious. And then the O is to observe and to open. And that's really opening up our senses to take in what's happening around us, take in what's happening within us. It's a great opportunity to feel into our bodies, and our emotions and our thoughts, and be curious. In a sense, we're kind of investigating the truth. Like a meteorologist might sense what's going on in the weather, we're kind of getting the sense of the patterns within us. And then the P part is to proceed into the moment now with a little bit more information, with a little bit more detail that we might make a more wise, more kind choice from. There's a quote from Louis Cozzolino, a psychologist, that says, "We are not the survival of the fittest, we are the survival of the nurtured." And I love that, because I think that speaks to really our ability to not put so much attention on doing and trying to get somewhere, but actually more a function on how we're being in relationship with ourselves and other people. So if you're ready, we're going to do exactly that. We're going to continue together, stop as a starting place. And so it's an invitation to kind of just let yourself arrive. You might have already been planning what you're going to do after this call, or judgments about whether you like what we're talking about, or maybe even mourning some other experiences. So we're going to let all of that go for a moment and just see if we can tune into and choose to be here. We might have to do that over and over again in the next few minutes. And then the T part is to, again, take a few breaths, which might be down into your belly. You might choose to slow your breathing down a little bit, so really the exhalation is a little bit longer than the inhalation. And as you're doing that, it's also an invitation to just notice if you're bracing right now, like squeezing your hands or holding your back stiffly. And if there's a place where you could just soften your posture. We're kind of just telling our body that right now we maybe don't need quite as much armor as we've been carrying. So wherever softening is possible, just letting that happen. And now the O part is to start to open our senses and observe. So what might you observe? You could observe maybe your body and just where it feels most comfortable. For many of us, that might be in our hands or our feet, or with our breath, or anywhere else that you notice. And if you find places that are comfortable, even if they're small, that can be a nice place that we can return to if we notice some more challenging experiences even in the next few minutes. You could also observe even parts of your body where maybe you're feeling a little bit less comfortable. So as I'm doing that, I'm noticing my heart rate's up a little bit. I'm noticing my shoulders are a little bit tight. Kind of just making space to notice these different parts and not needing to change them or even analyze them or fix them. Just really acknowledge things as they are. It's this curious, kind stance. And we can start to, as we're doing that, feel into what might be some of the emotions that are visiting us right now. Our body can be a wonderful cue. So maybe there's a bit of anxiety that we're feeling. Either we can detect it in our breathing or our heart rate or our tightness. Maybe you notice kind of a slumping posture and maybe a feeling of sadness. Or maybe there's an overwhelming sense of joy or calmness or peace that you're feeling, or some combination. And again, if it's difficult, you could come back to a place of ease just till it feels wise to proceed. So we're kind of making kind choices all the way along. We can also notice our thoughts. So we can notice both what kinds of thoughts we're having. We could also notice even our state of mind. Open, closed, scattered, or curious. Are there thoughts that maybe are feeding into a sense of anxiety? Are there other thoughts that maybe are supporting us to feel some gratitude? So again, just noticing what's here. With no other purpose than simply to see, take a look, trusting that there's a part of us that knows how to hold all of this. And then as you're ready, the P part is to proceed. So we're going to take what information we've got, whether it's from our body, from any emotions or any thoughts that came up, and we're going to proceed with some compassion. What do we notice our system needs right now? What does this moment need? As I was tuning in, as an example, I noticed my lips were a little bit dry, so I'm going to have a sip of water in a moment. I noticed, just looking out the window, I noticed the sun shining everywhere except for where I'm sitting right now. So proceeding with compassion actually just feels like getting myself outdoors for a few moments. But notice what's true for you. Maybe it's connecting with somebody that you've wanted to today, or giving yourself permission to have a nap. Whatever it is that actually feels like a kind gesture to honor whatever emotions you've been experiencing and what your state of being is right now. And I might invite you to take even a moment to notice what is easy in your environment. So it could be something in your visual field that brings you a sense of ease. I see some beautiful red flowers as I look out my window in my neighbor's yard and somebody tending to them. But maybe you have a picture of something in your home, or a cat on your lap, and just feeling their fur actually gives you a sense of ease. Just giving yourself a chance to connect with something that allows you to feel that sense of support, that sense of connection. And you could also maybe take a moment to let your body relax. We explored in week 1 how we're all kind of collectively holding our breath. So even just letting yourself take a couple of intentional breaths down into your belly, seeing if it's possible to make your exhalation even a little longer than your inhalation. These are ways that we can We just let our body know that right now there's nothing to do other than simply to be. And that might mean relaxing your shoulders or your jaw or any other place right now that you notice you're holding a little tension. And perhaps we might just as a group notice something that we feel grateful for, either a person or an organization or a part of ourselves. And then maybe letting yourself feel into maybe one loss that you're either currently experiencing or anticipate you might experience. It's kind of giving yourself a moment to trust that you can turn towards it, even just for a few moments. And if in doing so it's already challenging, you could maybe let your hand come to your heart or invite a sense of holding that place that feels tender, whatever might support you in creating the space to allow. And the invitation here is to let yourself actually feel what's happening in your body as you tune into this experience. Let yourself feel what's happening in your body. You could also notice in your body where there's places of ease, even as there's places that feel less comfortable. Noticing that there's a way that you might hold these different experiences. And maybe even letting yourself notice what kinds of thoughts come into your head. If you start to judge your experience as good or bad, and seeing if you can suspend any critique or any suppressing or even any denying of what's actually true for you. You could even, if you want, invite some phrases that allow you and support you to feel. So it might be something like, may I be open to experiencing this pain? May I find the resources within me that can be present to this sorrow or loss. May I be open to myself and others in sharing my experience. May I be open to receiving kindness from other people in terms of meeting me in whatever it is I'm experiencing. It's really just an open, kind holding of whatever we notice, and you might have some tears come up, you might have some yawning happening, you might have an experience of even numbness or not feeling much of anything. And all that's perfectly fine. However this is landing for you is fine. It's more just really an invitation to honor whatever is coming up for us and finding a way to be with it, trusting that that actually is of value. You might even be visited by some instinct that's a healthy instinct to respond to this loss, a way you might connect with yourself or another person. So just noticing what might nurture or nourish the need that you've been exploring. And then as the last part, maybe we could just let ourselves have a couple of breaths together and feel that sense of breathing the same air here on the Sunshine Coast, that we are in this together, that we can together hold losses that we might be facing or that we might face. And through that collective sense, just feeling into this resilience that supports us in being with difficult experiences. Well, I'm thinking of doing a mindfulness practice that hopefully ties in a lot of the things that we've been exploring together today, and I'm thinking of a particular acronym you may have heard of, RAIN, RAIN. I'll just walk us through that acronym because I think it can be really helpful with this particular emotion. So the R stands for recognize, as we've been talking about, this ability to kind of name or notice that we're getting some sort of arousal within us, whether it's irritability, anger, all the way to rage, and be able to recognize that something's happening. That's the R. The A then is to allow it, is to acknowledge that it's happening and create some space for us to have the emotion, rather than usually what we'll do is either suppress it, deny it, or just kind of somehow project it out there. And then the I is exactly what we've been discussing, is to get curious and investigate. So I is to investigate with some curiosity about, okay, what are some of the other underlying emotions? What's going on in my body? What are the unmet needs that I'm actually experiencing that are leading to some of this emotion? And then the N is much like we've been describing again around compassion, but it's about nurturing or nourishing the unmet need. And so what I'm hoping we can do right now is to basically do a little RAIN exercise together. And as we've been doing for the last few weeks, it's always nice to take a few moments to relax our systems a little bit. That's a great way to tell our body right now there's actually nothing to worry about, nothing to do other than to simply be here. So you might maybe just take a few deeper breaths into your belly. Or if you notice you need a bit of water or tea, taking a sip. And you could let yourself maybe find your feet on the floor and feel the contact of the ground below you. So feel the support of the earth. And as you're doing that, you might even give yourself permission to settle any of your muscles right now that might have gotten into defense mode. So if there's a way just to soften your shoulders or your jaw or your fists, just giving yourself a moment to let the system relax for a moment. And then maybe, if you don't mind, just letting yourself bring to mind something that has been an irritation or a source of frustration. And maybe not choosing something that takes you right into rage, so that's hard to work with, as we've been discussing, but something that's kind of maybe lower down from that spectrum. So it could be something you're seeing in other people, behaviors, whether that's somebody you know or somebody you live with. Or it could be something within yourself or that you work with. And just letting that situation come into your mind. And maybe just being curious now as you allow this to be here. So we're recognizing an event or a situation, and we're allowing it to be here for a moment so that we can explore it and investigate. So maybe just notice, what is the impact on your body as you're reflecting on this. Maybe you'll notice some areas where you start to tighten, or your heart rate changes, or your breathing changes. You might even notice if your body starts to stiffen or get ready to act in some way. You might even notice if your thought patterns change. So kind of seeing if you could create a space where no matter what's coming up, you can just be curious without needing to judge your experience or analyze it or fix it, but just really creating a field of awareness. And then we're going to do exactly what we talked about earlier, where we're going to be curious about any other emotions that might be here around the situation. So maybe there's a sense of fear, or some anxiety, or being hurt, or sense of loss. maybe a sense of fatigue, overwhelm. There may be even a sense of guilt or shame that shows up. So there's really no end to the different possible emotions that could be here. And for now, we're just investigating what's true, each of us being unique, noticing what's true for you. And these emotions that we might touch upon are actually wonderful links to what we value most. So as we touch into these emotions, they in fact might help us notice what's an unmet need, what right now has been under threat. So maybe you notice, there's some fear, and what I need is a bit more safety or security. Or if there's a sense of grief, maybe what you're needing is more care, more reassurance. More connection. Or if you're noticing exhaustion, maybe there's a sense of actually needing some rest, needing some downtime. And so the end part of the RAIN exercise is just to take all that you've noticed, and in particular as you feel into whatever unmet needs are here that in some ways our irritability is pointing a finger at. How might you nourish yourself? Or how might we even nourish this need? And so for some of us, it might just be putting a hand on our heart if we notice, wow, we just need a physical touch. Or we might kind of have a sense of an embrace for ourselves. Or even something you might say that's reassuring. Or it might mean that you need to have a conversation with somebody that would actually nourish you. So each of us are going to have something entirely unique, some creative way to meet the moment. So just trusting yourself to make contact with these possibilities. Seeing if whatever you come up with has a sense of compassion for yourself or others that perhaps allows us to move forward in a way that feels good. So maybe we'll end the exercise now. And I was, you talked about again that issue of it being difficult for us to sometimes offer ourselves these phrases. So I'm going to offer a practice that maybe eases that transition and gives us a bridge to bringing some of this goodwill towards ourselves. So maybe we'll do what we've been doing so far, which is to start by letting yourself relax. And you might even take a moment to feel the force of gravity and notice where you're making contact with your chair or a bed or the ground through your feet. And we've been talking about common humanity, and right now you might actually just notice this common force of gravity that all of us share, and how the earth, right from the moment we began, has been here to support us, is attracting us, and is attracted to us. So maybe just letting yourself settle into that being held from the earth below. And you could practice with your eyes open or your eyes closed. Whatever supports you in tuning in. You might let your attention come into your chest and feel your breath. You could even let yourself take a few deeper breaths. Which in and of itself is an act of kindness. And we're going to explore a self-compassion practice. So this involves saying some phrases out loud, and I'm going to share some phrases with you that you're welcome to use. You're also welcome to choose other phrases if the ones I'm choosing maybe don't suit you. So as you're feeling your breath, you might even get a sense of your heart nestled between your lungs, and even sense into the heart beating, the lungs breathing, and maybe reflecting on the fact that we each have a finite number of heartbeats and breaths. And so when we reflect like this, it actually brings us into contact with the preciousness and the fragility of life. So one way we could start the practice is by offering some phrases of goodwill outwards to somebody for whom it's really easy for you to feel goodwill towards. That could be a child or a pet, maybe a mentor or a teacher, somebody for whom the relationship is easy and it would be easy for you to wish them well. Again, I'll share some phrases, so either using these ones or some substitute. So with this being in your mind's eye and letting your attention be in our chest, seeing what it's like to generate some goodwill. And however you find this, whether it's difficult or easy, if you're feeling open or closed, letting that be okay, but just trusting that the intention is worthwhile. So may you be peaceful and happy. May you accept yourself just as you are. May you experience a deep sense of belonging. May you treat yourself with mercy and kindness. Maybe just seeing what that's like as you offer these wishes of goodwill outwards. And now we're going to play with this a little bit just to see what it's like to turn these wishes of goodwill inwards to ourselves. And so however you meet this idea, it's perfectly fine. If that feels challenging or impossible, just seeing if you could set the intention without worrying about the impact for now. Just letting whatever happens be okay. Our heart has its own seasons, and so we're not trying to force anything with this practice, but simply bring some kind attention. So may I be peaceful and happy. May I accept myself just as I am right now. May I experience a deep sense of belonging. May I treat myself with mercy, with kindness. So just seeing what it's like to let this wish ripple, resonate within us. And again, if it's feeling difficult, letting that be okay, and just inviting a sense of curiosity for whatever is happening. Maybe bringing some of this quality of lightness and mercy to the experience itself. And perhaps as the last part of the practice, we could maybe just return to the felt sense of our breathing. This breath that reminds us of our aliveness. This breath that connects us to each other, that we share with all of life around the world. And may you see this practice as an act of kindness, as an act of deep respect for ourselves and for each other. So thank you for practicing together. There's a real power that can happen when we take the time and collectively reflect like this. Well, there's lots of different types of mindfulness practices we could explore around connection. And in an ideal world, it would be, for me, literally connecting through communication with each other. So while that's going to be a bit challenging for us to explore today, there's another person we can connect with, which is ourselves. When I train with John Kabat-Zinn, one of the things he would often say is, see what it's like to be in your own good company. And I love that phrase because I think many of us, one of the things that can drive us to seek other relationships is some of us may actually be struggling with how we perceive ourselves. And there may not be as kind a relationship with ourselves that is maybe even possible, or even a sense of that we could do that. And so what I was hoping we might do right now is just do a very brief scan of our bodies, connecting with our bodies as a way to almost reconcile our relationship with how we find our physical self. And of course, when we do this, we're going to come across our own mind because we're going to have judgments that come up. So it's actually a great time for us to connect to how we relate with our own being. And this actually hopefully will give us some fuel to then decide what kinds of connections we want to make with others, because we're perhaps coming from a place with a little bit more kindness for ourselves. So I'm going to invite you to maybe just to take a few moments to feel the ground below you, feel your connection to the earth and maybe even nature itself, and sense that ground that we're all a part of, that supports us day in, day out. And you could connect, if you like, with your breath, another gift that comes to us without us having to do anything. And seeing if you can connect with your breath without needing to change it or modify it. If you notice some judgments coming up about how you're breathing, maybe just seeing if you can make some space around that experience Let your breath just breathe you. And then in a moment, we're simply going to scan our bodies to feel into how it is to be with us, within us right now. And as you do this, there's no right or wrong way your body's meant to be feeling. There's just the truth of what you notice. And seeing if you can connect in a kind, open, spacious way. Making space for whatever you find. So when you're ready from your breath, maybe letting yourself feel into your head, your scalp, your face. Connecting with any sensations you feel. Be tingling or itching, or pulsing or throbbing. Perhaps really letting yourself connect with places where there's some ease. Letting your awareness go inside of your head and down into the neck. Spreading down through our arms. Just to feel what it's like right now in our arms, right down to our fingertips. And as you're doing this, of course, feelings, thoughts, images might come into your mind, might come into your body. So you could let yourself notice these. In this way, we're connecting to our whole self, however things are. Meeting our body like we might a friend, with an unconditional positive regard. Letting your awareness, if you're ready, move into your torso, your chest, belly, pelvis, back. Noticing what's here to be felt. You might even notice all the places you can feel your breath or feel even your heartbeat. And again, if you notice judgments coming up, seeing if you can just acknowledge them and let them be. So there's no purpose other than simply to connect with how we are physically and, of course, emotionally and mentally as well. So if you're ready, we're going to complete by coming down into our lower half, into the buttocks, down into the legs, scanning any other parts from the pelvis down through our legs, knees, calves, shins, ankles, and feet. It's like we're giving ourselves permission to slow down enough to notice our truth, trusting we can handle it. You might notice pleasant sensations or ones that are less pleasant, so seeing if you can meet all of them. And so perhaps now you've got a sense of your legs, and perhaps to complete, we'll just let ourselves feel our whole body. Connect with the sense of our whole being that's alive. right now, even if there's parts that are missing or parts that are not working exactly as we'd like. Connecting with our sense of aliveness, just as we find ourselves. And then if your eyes have been closed, maybe just gently opening your eyes and opening your senses to the world around you and seeing what it's like to connect with the space you're in. Notice what captures your attention, either in visual form or sounds, smells. And perhaps just completing with an awareness of the breath right now that we each are breathing and how it connects us to each other, how it connects us to our community and the natural world around us. And trusting that when we do this, that might help us make wise choices in how we might connect moving forward. So I think maybe for this practice, we'll combine two things where we'll do a mindful practice to settle our systems and then also reflection so that we can, in a sense, start to tune into our own unique needs, our own unique wants, what matters to us most. You mentioned before, Lisa, that yes, I'm living with my parents. And so for me, it's a really important reflection. What matters most to me and what matters most to those that I'm caring for or that are caring for me. I'm never quite sure which way that relationship's going. But that can really help me decide, as Mary, as you were saying, what information do I need to find out about that? And it helps me actually limit the choices I'm having to make. So I'm going to invite all of us. We'll do, I think we've explored before the stop technique. And so the S is to stop. And that's, again, just an invitation to let the train of your mind that's often going back into the past or into the future, planning the day or rehashing past events. We're going to just see what it's like to get off either of those trains and see if we can just be here and realize for the next 10 minutes or so, hopefully there's nothing else you have to do other than just to be. And if that's the case, then you might invite the T, which is take a breath. And that's an invitation to take a deeper breath. For me, that often means breathing down into my belly, or maybe into my sides and the back, as a way to just tell my body that right now I can afford to take off some of the armor that we might feel like we have to wear. And as you're taking some breaths, you might notice places in your body where you might just let yourself soften. Maybe in the shoulders or the jaw. And then the O is to start to open our senses to observe. And it's often helpful to just start taking in our external environment. So really letting yourself register what's around you, either in the form of sounds or smells or sights. And especially being attuned to anything that might bring a smile to your face. I'm noticing the breeze in the trees, a cup of coffee that was only half drunk but was there waiting for me earlier. So whatever you notice. And then if you're ready, letting that awareness start to infuse your body. So you can maybe just get a sense of where your body's making contact with the ground or the chair or the pet that's in your lap. Seeing if you can be aware of just how your body is right now. Space for what is easy and maybe what's less easy. Bringing some of this quality that we've been talking about of even suspending our judgments of our body. Maybe feeling our breath and noticing how it is now. And our breath can also link us to any emotions. So we could sense just from this conversation what's with us now, whether it's excitement, appreciation, anxiety, frustration, maybe guilt for feeling excited. Who knows? We're complex beings, and so any and all of these emotions might be visiting us. And right now we're just seeing if we can take stock. Part of making decisions, really tune into our emotions, because our emotions actually give us valuable information about what's needed. And so perhaps as the last part of the exercise, we can start to tune into our mind. Notice where our mind is right now, even what is the state of our mind. And letting our mind be however it is. So if it's foggy, maybe a little drowsy, tired, calm, open, curious, whatever you're noticing, letting that be. And because we're exploring our mind, maybe just asking ourselves one or two questions. So, what matters to me most right now? In this phase of our lives, what feels most important for me to honor? We've shared some of the things for us, so whether that's rest or connecting, insulating, making money, whatever it might be, what matters to me most, and what matters to those that I'm caring for. And just seeing if we can make contact with, right now, our most important priorities. So this is all part of the O of stop, and the P is now to proceed into this moment. And hopefully each of us have had a chance to connect with some deeper wisdom, which just comes from tuning in. And seeing if you might, for yourself, just see what proceeding with compassion for yourself, for those that you care about, how might you honor what you've discovered? So for instance, for me, it's, around making sure I rest. And that means like carving out some time over the coming weeks where I have some boundaries around my commitments. And the other priority that came to my mind was around, my parents live in Winnipeg normally, so it's actually supporting them to find a way to get back home sometime. And so it's going to be working with them to find a way to really honor their wish to be home in a safe way that is going to take some risk, but risk that for us will be important. So I'll just encourage all of us to just take a moment and notice what you might need to first have the courage to turn in towards your own being, and perhaps just doing anything right now that affords you a sense of relaxation. And maybe just letting yourself know for the next 5 to 10 minutes, we collectively don't have anything to do other than to simply be. And so you might let yourself take a couple of deeper breaths. You might see what it's like to feel your breath enter into your back, into your belly, into your sides. You might notice if having your eyes open or closed supports a sense of ease or safety or comfort, and just letting yourself choose. You might notice as you tune in a part of your body that wants a gentle stretch. So maybe your neck or your shoulders or your back, or even just opening and closing the jaw. And if you're feeling ready, maybe just letting yourself bring to mind some area in your life where there is some uncertainty, some sense of change that's difficult to be with, some either loss or shifting situation that's bringing a little bit of unease. Just seeing if you might explore it a little bit, to be curious. One of the mindfulness attitudes is to bring a beginner's mind, where we let go of our assumptions or expectations and just open up to this moment as it is without needing to analyze or judge what you find. So with this challenge in mind, just noticing if your body is tightening around this challenge. If you notice places where your muscles tighten, and is there a way to soften? Maybe noticing if you've got your heart armored so that you somehow protect yourself. And is there a way that you might actually just let yourself feel? For no other reason than simply to acknowledge this moment, what's here. And as Lisa was mentioning, you could notice even just what kinds of thoughts are you having around this situation or event? What kinds of beliefs or assumptions or conclusions might you be carrying? Just to bring some awareness to how we're relating to this experience. And is there a way you might loosen the grip? Just seeing what that affords you. And because we've been talking about change, and we've talked about the reality that we, in fact, are change, our nature is change, that it may not always be something to fear, but in fact, something to align with. Perhaps just taking a few moments as we end to connect with our own breath. Just let yourself feel how your breath is constantly changing. Through no efforting or modifying or forcing our breath, just naturally feel this ever-changing life force of breathing. Each breath birthing in one moment, passing in the next. Just connecting with this reality that we know change. We are change. And you might let yourself, as we come to close of this practice, you might let yourself register some sounds. Noticing how sounds also are changing, including the sound of silence and whatever else might be entering into that silence. And it's always nice to set an intention for ourselves when we practice and we make contact with the moment, just to see if there's any way you might remember anything that you explored in this practice together. Either some way of holding your body, or some way of opening our heart, or some way of loosening the vice grips on our mind, or even just to open up to our breath or the sounds around us. To be in the mystery of life rather than resisting the flow.